By the 17th century, the Mughal Empire became the economic titan of the early modern world, far exceeding the typical reach of a traditional kingdom. This chart maps global GDP in the early 1600s. The massive sector dominating the distribution represents the Mughal Empire, generating nearly a quarter of world wealth. It produced roughly 28% of global manufacturing output, dwarfing the production of contemporary European powers. The rulers who engineered this massive machine, beginning with Babur in 1526, were not native to the Indian subcontinent. They were Turco-Mongol outsiders from Central Asia, deeply rooted in Persian culture. Historically, empires built by outsiders collapse under economic mismanagement or cultural rebellion, but the Mughals engineered a different outcome. Instead of trying to erase the rigidly structured, predominantly Hindu local culture, they chose to negotiate. They built what sociologists call a third space, a deliberate, massive synthesis of their own Persian courtly traditions with indigenous Indian systems. This integration was applied systematically across three main pillars of society. First, the imperial economy, second, the visual arts, and third, written literature. How did this specific formula for cross-cultural integration physically build a proto-industrial superpower? The first pillar is economic synthesis. When Emperor Akbar took power, he abolished the ancient tribute system in favor of a new policy called the Zabt. The Zabt was a unified monetary tax. Instead of demanding a random share of whatever a farmer grew, the state assessed taxes based on carefully measured acreage and a 10-year average of local crop prices. Crucially, this tax had to be paid in cash. To get that cash, subsistence peasants were forced to sell their harvest in larger commercial markets. Because the tax rate was fixed, farmers prioritized high-value cash crops like cotton, indigo, and silk to maximize their returns. This created the massive output seen in these intricate textile patterns. To keep this newly energized market running smoothly, the Mughals standardized a high-purity silver currency. The result was a global macroeconomic vacuum. The empire exported so many manufactured goods that foreign buyers had to pay in precious metals. Roughly 80% of Mughal imports consisted entirely of bullion, drawn directly from the New World and Japan. The Zabt functioned as the structural catalyst that turned the Mughal Empire into the largest net importer of silver outside of Europe. The second pillar is visual synthesis. The laboratory for this experiment was the Kitabkhana, or the imperial workshops. Here, emperors placed imported Persian masters into the exact same rooms as indigenous Indian artists, forcing them to work side by side on the same manuscripts. Notice the flat architectural perspective and the rigid, hierarchical placement of the figures around the throne. But in this battle scene, the indigenous Indian influence takes over. We see a vibrant color palette, highly naturalistic animals, and chaotic, dynamic movement. This blending scaled up to architecture. The Mughals imported structural concepts from Iran, like vaulted open halls called iwans, and strictly symmetrical quadripartite paradise gardens. However, they built these imported layouts using distinctly Indian materials. They utilized heavy red sandstone and integrated local design elements, like domed pavilions called chhatris. This architectural hybridity reached its peak when these two traditions fused into a single masterpiece, the Taj Mahal. The final pillar is textual synthesis. While Persian was established as the prestige language of the imperial court and government administration, it did not erase local tongues. Instead, Persian poetic forms, like the lyric ghazal, were adopted, but adapted to express Indian emotional sensibilities and local metaphors. Over decades, the daily commingling of Persian-speaking officials and the local population gave birth to a completely new language, Urdu. The Mughals engineered a hybrid vocabulary to govern and express their territory, replacing the basic commands of a conqueror with a shared cultural language. By the 18th century, the empire fractured under Emperor Aurangzeb's military overexpansion. It steadily weakened until it fell to the British colonial machine in 1857. But looking at the Mughal era merely as a period of foreign occupation misses the reality of how they operated. It was a profound two-way cultural negotiation. The immense wealth generated by the Mughal economy may have been drained by later colonialism. But the art, the architecture, and the administrative systems forged in that third space became the permanent